There is a mythology where the gods do not simply rule from a mountaintop. They hold ranks. They file reports. They can be promoted, demoted, and even fired from their jobs. Heaven, in this tradition, is a government, a vast celestial civil service with ministries and paperwork, and an emperor at the very top signing the orders of the universe. But long before that heavenly government existed, the myths say there was only an egg of pure darkness, and something enormous was sleeping inside it. There is a giant who split the sky from the earth with his own body, and then became the mountains and the rivers when he finally lay down and died. There was a woman with the coiling tail of a serpent, who knelt by a river and shaped the very first human beings out of soft yellow mud. There is an archer who shot 9 burning suns out of the sky, and a wife who swallowed his stolen medicine and drifted helplessly up to the moon. There is a monkey, born from a stone, who devoured the peaches of immortality, erased his name from the book of death, and dared to fight all of heaven at once. And there is a woman of infinite mercy, who hears every single cry of suffering in the world, all at the same time, and comes to answer them. These are the gods, the spirits, and the immortals of China. And there are far more of them than you have ever been told. But here is the one thing that almost every video about them gets completely wrong. This is not one mythology. It is at least 4 different mythologies, layered on top of each other across more than 4,000 years. There are the ancient folk myths, older than writing itself, and there is the enormous ordered pantheon that Daoist priests deliberately built, god by god. There are deities imported wholesale from Buddhist India, and there are characters invented by novelists that almost everyone today mistakes for genuinely ancient gods. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which layer each god belongs to, what is truly ancient, what was borrowed, and what is really a bestseller in disguise. So let us go all the way back, past the emperors, past the nobles, to the oldest story of all. Back to that silent egg in the dark. In the very beginning, the myths say, there was no heaven and no earth. There was only formless chaos, swirling in the shape of one enormous black egg. And inside that egg, for 18,000 long years, a giant slept and slowly grew. His name was Pangu. One day, at last, Pangu woke. He found himself trapped in a cramped and suffocating darkness, and the thought of it filled him with rage. So he stretched out his mighty limbs, and the shell of the egg cracked open. The light, clear parts of it drifted gently upward to become the sky. The heavy, murky parts sank down beneath his feet to become the solid earth. And for the very first time in existence, there was an above and a below. But Pangu was afraid the two halves would drift back together and crush the new world. So he planted himself between them, and he pushed. For another 18,000 years, he kept growing 10 feet taller every single day, forcing the sky ever higher and pressing the earth ever lower. Until at last the heavens and the earth were fixed safely apart. And then the exhausted giant lay himself down upon the world, and he died. And in his death, Pangu became everything. His final breath turned into the wind and the drifting clouds. His booming voice became the rolling thunder. His left eye rose as the sun, and his right eye as the moon. His flowing blood ran out to fill the rivers and seas, and his flesh became the fertile fields. His hair scattered upward and became the glittering stars, and the tiny fleas that lived upon his skin, some storytellers say, became the first human beings. Now, here is a warning that matters for this entire story. As beautiful and as primal as it feels, this myth is not nearly as ancient as it sounds. Pangu is not written down anywhere until around the 3rd century of our era, in a now lost text by a scholar named Xu Zheng. He may well come from far older folk tales of southern China, but as a written creation myth, Pangu is actually something of a latecomer. The truly old creator, the one already carved onto tombs centuries earlier during the Han Dynasty, is someone else entirely. She has the upper body of a beautiful woman and the long coiling tail of a serpent. Her name is Nuwa, and she is the ancient mother of this world. In the oldest version of her story, the world already exists, but it is achingly empty. There is no one anywhere to walk it or enjoy it. So Nuwa kneels down beside a river of soft yellow clay, and with her own hands she begins to shape little figures, one at a time. Each figure she molds so carefully comes alive and dances joyfully at her feet. These first finely made people become the nobles, the fortunate few. But shaping each one by hand is slow, painstaking work, and the world is impossibly wide. So she takes a long cord and dips it deep into the mud. She drags the heavy cord through the clay and flicks it, and every falling droplet becomes a person. These become the common people, the countless masses. It is a strange and surprisingly honest little myth, an ancient explanation for why the world holds both a privileged few and an endless, ordinary many. But Nuwa's single greatest deed comes later, in a moment of cosmic catastrophe, when the sky itself is torn open and begins to fall. In the myth, a furious war between gods shatters one of the great pillars that hold up heaven. The sky cracks apart from end to end. Fire pours down from the wound. Floodwaters rise up from below. Monstrous beasts prowl and devour the people. The whole order of the world is collapsing. So Nuwa gathers up stones of 5 different colors from the riverbeds, and she melts them down in a great fire into a shining molten paste. With that glowing paste, she reaches up and patches the broken sky, sealing the terrible wound in heaven, and she stops the falling fire and the rising flood. And to prop the exhausted heavens firmly back into place, she cuts the 4 legs from a giant turtle and stands them up at the 4 corners of the world. Nuwa is the true ancient mother of this mythology, a creator and a repairer, and older in the written record than even the giant Pangu himself. Now, the early Chinese did not always think about the divine in terms of gods. Very often, they thought about it in terms of emperors. Their earliest legends are not about deities lounging on clouds, but about wise and half-divine rulers who slowly civilized the human race. Historians group them together as the 3 sovereigns and the 5 emperors, figures who are half god, half king, and half distant folk memory. One of the greatest is Shennong, the divine farmer, often shown with the head or horns of an ox, who taught the people how to plant and harvest crops. He is said to have personally tasted hundreds of wild plants, testing each one on his own body, discovering which were medicine and which were deadly poison. This Shennong is frequently merged with another figure, the Yan Emperor, called Yandi, a fiery ancestral ruler of the warm southern lands. And standing against him is the most famous ruler of them all, the Yellow Emperor, whose name is Huangdi. Huangdi is remembered as the founder of Chinese civilization itself, the great common ancestor whom the Chinese people would one day claim as their own. The legends credit his brilliant court with inventing writing, the calendar, medicine, boats, the compass, and even the terrible art of war. The two great emperors clashed at the Battle of Bangquan, and there the Yellow Emperor defeated the Flame Emperor and won the right to rule. But his most terrible enemy was Chiyo, a monstrous war god with a head of bronze and cruel horns, the master of every weapon and of blinding fog. At the Battle of Zhuolu, Chiyu raised a thick, blinding mist to trap his enemies. But Huangdi answered it with a wondrous chariot that always pointed south. The Yellow Emperor found his way through the fog and won, and Chiyu fell. And in that single hard-won victory, the myths say, Chinese civilization was truly born. Now let us return to the sky and to one of the oldest and saddest stories in all of China, the story of the 10 Sons. Long ago, in the age of a legendary emperor, the myth says there were not one sun in the sky, but 10 of them. They were 10 brothers, and they were meant to cross the heavens politely, one at a time, each taking his orderly turn to light the day. But one morning, out of sheer mischief, all 10 of the suns rose together into the sky at once, and the whole earth below them began to burn. The crops withered in the fields, the rivers dried to dust, the very land cracked open, and the people cried out helplessly beneath an impossible scorching sky. So heaven sent down its finest archer, a mighty hero named Huyi, armed with a great red bow and a quiver of pure white arrows. Huyi planted his feet, drew back his enormous bow, and one by one he shot 9 of the 10 suns clean out of the sky. Each sun he struck fell to earth as a dead 3-legged crow, and he left just one sun burning gently, the very sun that warms our world today. As a reward for saving the world, the Queen Mother of the West gave Huyi a single pill of immortality, enough for just one person to rise up to heaven. But Huyi did not want to ascend to heaven alone and leave his beloved wife Chang'e behind on earth, so he hid the precious medicine away. Here the versions of the story differ. In one popular telling, a greedy student breaks in to steal the elixir while the great archer is away from home. To keep the medicine out of the thief's hands, Chang'e swallows all of it herself, and in an instant her body begins to grow impossibly light. She drifts up off the ground, past the rooftops, past the clouds, higher and higher, unable to stop, until at last she comes to rest on the cold and distant moon. And there she remains to this day, a lonely goddess of the moon, with only a jade rabbit for company, gazing forever back at the earth and the husband she lost. The Chinese still honor her every autumn at the Mid-Autumn Festival, gathering to look up at the great full moon and to share round, sweet mooncakes. So that is the first layer of it all. Pangu, Nuwa, the mythic emperors, and the 10 Sons, stories older than any Chinese empire. Now we come to the second great layer, one built not by ancient folk memory but very deliberately by an organized religion, Daoism. As Daoism grew into a formal faith with priests and temples, it did something truly remarkable. It sat down and built an entire heaven from scratch. And the priests gave that heaven a structure that mirrored the Chinese empire itself, a vast celestial court with a full and rigid chain of command. At the very top sit 3 figures so exalted, so remote, that they are almost beyond personality altogether. They are called the 3 Pure Ones. They are the Sun Qing, the 3 highest gods in all of Taoism, not really characters, but pure emanations of the Tao, the underlying way of the universe. The first is the celestial worthy of the primordial beginning, the very source from which the entire cosmos first unfolds into being. The second is the celestial worthy of the numinous treasure, the keeper of the sacred scriptures and the turning wheels of cosmic time. The third is the celestial worthy of the way and its power, who is often identified with the deified spirit of the ancient philosopher Lao Tzu himself. These three are cosmic principles far more than they are living gods. They sit in serene silence and do not meddle in the daily affairs of the world. For the actual day-to-day running of the universe, there is someone else. And he is the one God that almost every Chinese person can name, the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor, called Yu Huang, is the supreme reigning ruler of the celestial bureaucracy. He is, quite literally, heaven's emperor on the throne. Picture him not as a god of storms and lightning, but as a divine administrator on a dragon throne, robed and crowned exactly like an earthly emperor. And spreading out beneath him is a vast government of gods that mirrors the empire perfectly, with a separate department for almost every part of existence. There is a ministry of thunder and a ministry of waters. There are ministries of fire, of wealth, of medicine, and of the 5 sacred mountains. Every single god holds an official post, like a heavenly civil servant. And just like any official, a god can be rewarded, punished, transferred, or replaced. And it is worth knowing that this Jade Emperor actually rose to the top rather late. His cult was deliberately elevated by the emperors of the Song dynasty. Around the year 1008, a Song emperor claimed to have received sacred letters directly from heaven and used them to raise the Jade Emperor on high. Even the humble family kitchen has its own god in this vast system. He is the kitchen god, who quietly watches over every household all year long. And once a year, near the new year, he flies up to heaven to report each family's behavior directly to the Jade Emperor. So the families prepare for him. They smear sticky, sweet syrup across the lips of his little statue, hoping he will speak only sweet words above, or that his mouth will be too stuck to tell any tales at all. Now, if there is an emperor of heaven, then tradition demands an empress figure to match him, and she, as it happens, is far older than he is. She is Shiwangmu, the Queen Mother of the West, and her long story is a perfect lesson in how a god can transform completely over the centuries. In her most ancient form, described in the classic of Mountains and Seas, she is not gentle at all. She is a wild and genuinely terrifying being. She has the sharp teeth of a tiger and the long tail of a leopard, and she presides grimly over plague and over cosmic punishment. But over the passing centuries, she is slowly transformed, softened, and exalted, until she becomes a radiant and benevolent goddess of immortality itself. She comes to dwell in a shining jade palace atop the mythical Mount Kunlun, far away at the western edge of the known world. And in her heavenly garden there grows the single most coveted treasure in all of Chinese myth, the famous peaches of immortality. These magical peaches ripen only once every few thousand years, and to eat just one of them is to live forever among the immortals. Now remember that garden, and remember those glowing peaches, because a certain very mischievous monkey is going to come and raid them very soon. Far below the Queen Mother's mountain lie the great seas, and those seas have their own powerful rulers. They are the Dragon Kings. Chinese dragons are nothing like the fire-breathing monsters of the West. They are graceful, divine beings of water, of rain, and of the flowing rivers. The Dragon Kings, called the Longwang, rule over the 4 seas from glittering jeweled palaces hidden deep beneath the crashing waves. They command the rain and the storms, and so desperate farmers prayed to them in every season of drought, begging them to fill the empty sky with clouds. And here is another important clue about the layers. The very idea of a dragon king did not begin in China at all. It arrived along with Buddhism. It was fused together from the Indian Naga, the great serpent spirit of Buddhist scripture, laid gently over China's own ancient and beloved dragons. Which brings us straight to that third great layer. The gods who came to China as foreigners, carried in along the trade roads from Buddhist India. The greatest of them all began life as an Indian bodhisattva named Avalokiteshvara, the great Lord of Compassion who vowed to save all suffering beings. In India, this bodhisattva was clearly male. But as the faith slowly traveled east and settled deep into China, something quietly and profoundly changed. Over the centuries, the deity took on a gentle female form and a new Chinese name to go with it. That name is Guanyin. Guanyin, the goddess of mercy. The one who hears the cries of the whole world and who comes down without fail to the frightened and the suffering. Her very name means the one who perceives the sounds of the world. Sailors and mothers and the sick and the lost have all prayed to her for 1,000 years. She is most often shown in flowing white robes, holding a small vase from which she pours out the cool, sweet dew of her endless compassion. So now we have 3 whole layers: the ancient folk myths, the built-up Daoist government of heaven, and the imported gods of Buddhism. But there is a 4th source of gods, and in the popular imagination, it may just be the most powerful source of them all: novels. In the Ming Dynasty, brilliant storytellers wove all of these gods together into sprawling epic novels, and in doing so, they reinvented them forever. The most famous of all is Journey to the West, written in the 16th century and traditionally attributed to a scholar named Wu Chengen. On the surface, the novel retells a true historical event, a devoted monk's long pilgrimage to India to bring back the sacred Buddhist scriptures. But its true hero is a creature so wildly beloved that he now overshadows half the ancient gods of China. He is the Monkey King. His name is Sun Wukong, and he is born from a stone egg on a lonely mountaintop. He is wild, brilliant, arrogant, and utterly without fear. He masters magic and combat, wields a shape-shifting iron staff pulled from the ocean floor, and can leap thousands of miles in a single somersault. He raids the Queen Mother's sacred peaches, gulps down the pills of immortality, and boldly strikes his own name right out of the underworld's Book of the Dead. And when all the armies of heaven together cannot manage to stop him, it takes the Buddha himself to finally reach down and trap the rebellious monkey. And here is the crucial point to remember. Sun Wukong feels utterly ancient and timeless, but he is very largely a literary invention of that one Ming novel. The very same is true of another towering book called The Investiture of the Gods, which also comes from that rich Ming era. It tells the grand story of how the gods of the Daoist heaven were first appointed, turning the souls of fallen warriors into deities by heavenly decree. So much of what people today picture as ancient Chinese religion actually comes straight out of these dazzling and surprisingly late best-selling novels. Finally, one last group, beloved across every single layer we have seen. They are the 8 immortals, a merry band of Daoist saints. Once they were ordinary human beings, but each of them achieved immortality, and now they travel the world together, each with a magic tool and a strange tale. There is a lame beggar with an iron crutch, a flute-playing youth, the one lone woman among them, and an old man who rides his donkey sitting backward. Together they once crossed the sea, each using their own special power instead of a boat. It became a proverb the Chinese still fondly quote to this very day. So there they all are, finally sorted out. The ancient giants, Pangu and Nuwa, the half-divine mythic emperors of the distant dawn. The great Daoist court of the Jade Emperor, the imported Buddhist mercy of Guanyin, and the novel-born wonder of the Monkey King. Not one single mythology, but more than 4,000 years of them, stacked and woven together into a single, glittering, crowded heaven. And now, the next time you meet one of these gods, you will know exactly where they came from, which layer they belong to, and why they matter.